She comes with 3 kids. She's not marrying into this family. My future mother-in-law snapped, loud enough for the whole dinner table to hear. I had raised my 3 children alone for 6 years before I let myself fall in love again. We sent 74 invitations to his side of the family. Not one RSVP came back. On our wedding day, his entire family section sat completely empty. I turned to my groom, took his hand, and said 4 words that changed everything. Lorraine Donovan set her wine glass down with deliberate precision and asked the question that would poison the next 6 weeks. So, Thea, Nash tells me you have children from a previous marriage? I was 37 years old, a pediatric nurse with 9 years at Billings Clinic, and I'd smoothed my navy dress 3 times already, trying not to fidget across the white tablecloth from Nash's parents. The Heights Country Club dining room smelled like old money and fresh roses. Crystal chandeliers threw soft light across tables where Montana's wealthiest families ate prime rib and pretended not to eavesdrop on each other's conversations. Nash Donovan, 40 years old and steady as they come, taught history at West High and coached varsity basketball. He'd warned me his mother could be particular. He hadn't warned me she could be surgical. 3 children, Lorraine continued, her smile practiced and cold. She was 57, seated at the head of the table like a queen holding court. How old are they? 12, 9, and 7, I said, keeping my voice even. They're wonderful kids, I'm sure they are. She paused, lifting her wine glass to the light as if examining it for imperfections. For someone beside her, Vernon Donovan, 64, retired from 30 years in insurance, studied his menu like it contained the secrets of the universe. He'd barely spoken since we sat down. Nash's hand twitched toward mine on the tablecloth, but he stopped himself. We'd only been dating 8 months. This dinner was supposed to be a formality, a pleasant getting to know you before the wedding we'd been circling around discussing. I'd known it mattered. I hadn't known it was an ambush. They must be a handful, Lorraine said, her voice carrying just enough to reach the table behind us. 3 children from another man. That's quite a responsibility to ask someone to take on. I'm not asking Nash to take on anything, I said carefully. We're building a life together. The kids are part of that, of course. Lorraine set down her glass. But you have to understand, dear, from a family perspective, 3 ready-made children. Not exactly daughter-in-law material for this family. How many ways can a mother-in-law say damaged goods without using those exact words? Lorraine had found at least 7 in the last 30 seconds. Each one calibrated to sound like concern while cutting like a scalpel. She said blended family like it was a euphemism for something shameful. She said previous marriage with the delicate emphasis people usually reserve for criminal records. Mom. Nash's voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. I'm only being honest, darling. Lorraine turned her smile on her son. Better now than later, when expectations are set. She comes with considerable baggage. 3 children who aren't yours. An ex-husband somewhere in the background. These are practical concerns. Vernon cleared his throat softly. For a moment I thought he might speak. Instead, he turned a page of the wine list. My children aren't baggage, I said, and my voice came out steadier than my hands felt. And my divorce was 5 years ago. I'm not hiding anything. Of course you're not hiding anything. Lorraine's tone suggested the opposite. I'm simply saying that our family has certain standards. My son could have married anyone. He still could. The thing about being a nurse. You learn to keep your face calm while your hands shake under the table. I'd held that composure through codes in the pediatric ICU, through parents screaming at me when I couldn't save their children, through 12-hour shifts that turned into 16. I held it now while Lorraine Donovan took apart my worth as a human being over a $40 Caesar salad. Nash has made his choice, I said quietly. Choices can be reconsidered. Lorraine dabbed her lips with her napkin, especially when they impact an entire family's future. Grandchildren should be grandchildren, not stepchildren 3 times removed. Across from me, Nash had gone very still. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white around his water glass. I could see him calculating, weighing. His mother, his future. The mathematics of choosing sides. I only say what everyone will be thinking, dear. Lorraine continued, her voice pitched to carry across 3 tables now. Better to be realistic now. A woman with 3 children. Well, it's not what anyone would have chosen for my son. If you've ever sat at a table where someone measured your worth by your past, you know the exact weight of that silence. Vernon signaled the waiter for the check. Nash set down his water glass with control that looked like it cost him something. And Lorraine looked satisfied. Not angry, not defensive. Satisfied. That's when I understood. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't even cruelty for its own sake. This was an opening move in a longer game. Under the table, Nash's hand found mine. His fingers were warm, steady, certain. They squeezed once, twice. A promise without words, but across the white tablecloth. His mother smiled like she'd already won, like she'd seen that hand squeeze and filed it away as evidence. Like she knew something I didn't yet. I didn't know that night would be the kindest she'd be for the next 6 weeks. I didn't know that 74 people, Nash's entire extended family, were about to prove her right about exactly how much a hand squeeze could shield 3 children from the judgment of people who'd decided we weren't good enough. All I knew was that Lorraine Donovan had declared war, and I was holding my future husband's hand like it was a life raft in a storm that hadn't even started yet. The silence in Nash's car was louder than anything his mother had said at dinner. Rain streaked the windows as we drove through the dark Montana roads, leaving Billings. Nash gripped the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing in the world. I watched raindrops race each other down the glass and tried not to replay every word Lorraine had said about my children being baggage, about me not being suitable, about how her son could have married anyone. I don't care what she thinks, Nash said finally, his voice rough. I care what you think. I think your mother just declared war on me in front of half the country club. Then she's going to lose. He pulled the car over to the shoulder, rain drumming on the roof. Thea, look at me. I turned. In the dashboard light, his face was all sharp angles and determination. I love you, he said. I love Sloan and Ethan and Sophie. I love the life we're building. My mother's opinion doesn't get a vote. Nash, wait. He leaned across me to open the glove compartment. From under the registration and insurance papers, he pulled out a small velvet box. I stared at it. You had a ring in your glove box? I've been carrying it for 3 weeks. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I was waiting for the perfect moment. A sunset, maybe. Or that spot by the river where we had our first date. Something romantic. This isn't romantic. This is me realizing the perfect moment is right now, when someone just tried to tell me you're not enough. He opened the box. A simple diamond caught the light. Marry me, not because it's planned or perfect, but because I choose you. Every damn day. I choose you and those 3 kids. There's a difference between being chosen and being chosen despite. I was learning which one I wanted. Yes, I said, and my voice cracked. Yes. He slid the ring on my finger with shaking hands, and we sat in his car on the side of the road in the rain. We were engaged 2 months earlier than either of us had planned, because his mother had tried to break us and only made him more certain. I should have known then that certainty wouldn't be enough. That 74 people would prove loving someone and standing up for them in front of your entire family are 2 very different acts of courage. But in that moment, with rain on the windows and a ring on my finger, I let myself believe a hand squeeze and a proposal could shield us from whatever came next. 3 days later, Nash took me to meet his great-aunt Opal. Opal Sherwood was 75, Vernon's older sister, and a retired teacher who lived in a cottage in Laurel, 20 minutes outside Billings. Her home smelled like lavender and old books, and she answered the door with a genuine smile that made my chest ache with relief. "So you're Thea," she said, taking both my hands in hers. "Vernon's told me about you. Come in, come in." And this must be Sloane. Sloane, my 12-year-old, stood quietly beside me, her eyes tracking every gesture with the careful attention of a child who'd learned to read rooms early. She'd been that way since the divorce, watching, measuring, protecting herself. "Yes, ma'am," Sloane said softly. "None of that ma'am business. Call me Aunt Opal." She led us into a living room stuffed with books and quilts and photographs. "Vernon says you work in pediatrics, Thea. That takes a special kind of patience. If you've spent years being the person nobody quite wanted at the table, you know how disorienting kindness feels when it finally arrives." We talked for an hour. Opal asked about my work at the clinic, about Sloane's favorite subjects in school, about how we'd met Nash. She pulled a vintage copy of Anne of Green Gables from her shelf and pressed it into Sloane's hands. "I taught 6th grade for 40 years, Opal said. "This was always my favorite to share with the careful ones." "Thank you," Sloane whispered, clutching the book like treasure. "You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago." Opal's eyes grew distant. She had your same careful eyes, your same way of watching to see if it's safe before you trust. I watched my daughter's face soften slightly, the way it did when someone truly saw her. But as we stood to leave, Opal's warmth shifted into something else, something heavier. On the porch, she caught my hand. "There are things you should know," she said quietly. "But the timing has to be right, about Nash's family, about what people do when they're afraid of their own past." She glanced back toward the house, where Sloane was waiting by the car. "You're going to need strength for what's coming, Thea. More than you think." "I don't understand. What makes a 75-year-old retired teacher look at you like she's carrying a weight she can barely stand to keep quiet?" Opal held my gaze a moment too long, as if weighing whether to speak. Her mouth opened, closed. She squeezed my hand instead. "Just remember," she said finally, "that cruelty usually comes from pain, and Lorraine has more pain than anyone knows." Then she smiled, patted my cheek, and sent us on our way, as if she hadn't just cracked open a door to something vast and terrible. In my rearview mirror, I watched her standing at her cottage door, one hand on the frame. As we turned the corner, I saw her reach up to wipe her eyes. Whatever she wasn't telling me, it wasn't small. And whatever she knew about people afraid of their own past, I had the cold certainty it was about to become my problem too. I spent the week after visiting Opal trying not to think about her cryptic warnings. We had a wedding to plan, invitations to send, a life to build. Whatever secret she was keeping about Lorraine's past could wait. The first refusal arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between a grocery store flyer and the electric bill. I stood at my kitchen table and slid my finger under the envelope flap. Nash's Aunt Caroline had beautiful handwriting, the kind they don't teach anymore. The RSVP card was checked with regret. "So sorry," it read in elegant script. "Prior commitment that weekend." I set it aside. June was busy for weddings. People had conflicts. This was normal. The second refusal came Thursday. Nash's cousin Brian cited a work conference in Denver. The third arrived Saturday. His uncle's family had a scheduling conflict they couldn't resolve. I started a notebook. On the left page, I listed names. On the right, I copied their reasons. Travel, work, prior plans. Each one sounded perfectly reasonable when I read it alone. By the end of the first week, I had 8 refusals and 4 invitations still pending from Nash's side of the family. June weddings are busy, I told myself, making coffee in an empty kitchen at 6 in the morning before my shift. This is normal. But I kept the notebook. By the second week, the pending pile had vanished. Every invitation sent to a Donovan relative had returned with a polite decline. I counted them twice to be sure. 12 invitations, 12 regrets. I added them to my notebook in careful columns, my nursing training kicking in. Document everything. Track the data. Find the pattern. Except I didn't want to find a pattern. I wanted these to be what they claimed to be. Random, unfortunate timing. 16 now, I whispered, adding Nash's second cousin, who'd just discovered a sudden need to visit her daughter in Oregon that exact weekend. Still time for the others to respond. How many prior commitments does it take before you admit someone is inventing them? I pushed the thought away and went to work, where I could focus on things I understood. Pediatric dosages, IV placements, parents who needed reassurance their children would be fine. Problems with clear solutions. The 17th refusal arrived while I was intubating a 7-year-old in respiratory distress. The 18th came during my lunch break. By the time I got home that evening, there were 23 RSVP cards stacked in a neat pile on my kitchen counter, and my hands were shaking too badly to open them. I knew what they would say. I opened them anyway. Regrets. All regrets. 23 invitations to Nash's extended family. 23 carefully worded excuses about travel and work and prior commitments and family obligations that somehow all fell on the exact same weekend. "That's fine," I said to my empty kitchen. "That's fine." But I sat down at the table and cried anyway, because even though I didn't want to see it, the pattern was there. Mathematical. Impossible to ignore. Faye Mercer showed up the next evening with Thai food and wedding magazines. She was 36, a fellow nurse who'd worked beside me for 5 years and knew when I was lying about being okay. "You sounded weird on the phone," she said, setting cartons on my counter. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just tired." "Thea," I gestured at the pile of RSVP cards. "Some of Nash's family can't make it. It's fine." Faye picked up the stack, started reading. Her frown deepened with each card. "How many invitations did you send to his side?" she asked. 23. But that's not everyone, just the extended family. His parents and a few close relatives are coming regardless. And how many said yes? I looked at my notebook, at the careful columns I'd been maintaining, at the list of excuses I'd been cataloging like case notes. None yet, I said. But there's still time. There's a specific kind of silence when your best friend realizes something you've been refusing to see. Faye set the cards down slowly. Let me see your tracking sheet. I slid the notebook across the table. She scanned the columns. Her finger traced down the list of names, then across to the reasons. Her expression went from concerned to carefully neutral. The face nurses make when delivering bad news to families. Thea, she said quietly. These all came back within 2 weeks? 12 days. And every single one is a no? People are busy in June. Weddings, graduations. 23 people, all with conflicts on the same weekend? Faye looked up at me. You think this is coincidence? What else would it be? Organized. The word hung between us like smoke. I shook my head. You're saying someone called all these people and told them not to come? That's paranoid. Is it? Faye pulled out her phone, opened a spreadsheet app. Give me the numbers. I watched her enter the data. 23 invitations sent. 23 refusals received. 0 acceptances. She turned the phone to show me. The column of zeros looked obscene. 23 cards. 0 yeses. The math didn't lie even when I wanted it to. This isn't bad luck, Thea. Faye's voice was gentle. Someone organized this. I stared at the spreadsheet. At the perfect, impossible pattern. At the evidence I'd been collecting in my notebook while telling myself it meant nothing. Nash's mother, I whispered. Probably. She called them, all of them. Told them not to come to our wedding. Faye reached across the table and took my hand. Yeah, I think she did. The Thai food went cold while we sat there. My best friend holding my hand, and my notebook open between us, showing 23 ways to say no, without admitting you'd been told to. I didn't sleep much after Faye left, those numbers burning behind my eyelids. 23 invitations. 0 yeses. When Lorraine called 3 days later, her voice had changed from ice to honey, which somehow felt worse. Thea, dear, she said, warmth dripping through the phone. I've been thinking about you. I hope we can talk, woman to woman. I gripped the counter. What do you want? Only to help. A perfect pause. Have you thought about how 3 children will affect Nash's career? Excuse me? His teaching position. The coaching. Silk over steel. Teachers don't make much. Adding 3 children to his expenses. I wonder if you've considered the burden. My children aren't a burden. Of course not. Not to you. Another pause. But to Nash? 3 stepchildren he didn't choose? Men don't always admit what they're thinking, dear. They're too kind. They say yes when they should say no. Nash chose this, chose us. Did he? Or did you choose for him? The warmth never left her voice. That was the worst part. A single mother with 3 children, a nurse's salary. One might wonder if you saw an opportunity. A stable man with a good job and no children of his own. If someone's ever weaponized concern against you, you know how it works. They never say you're wrong. They just ask if you've really thought it through. I love your son, I said, keeping my voice level. Love is wonderful, but is it fair to ask him to sacrifice his potential? He could have had his own children. A fresh start. Instead, he's taking on 3 from another man's marriage. Some would call that settling. Some would call it building a family. You're very defensive, dear. I'm only thinking of Nash's happiness. You want what's best for him too, don't you? She never said don't marry him. She never said I was using him. She just planted seeds and let me water them with my own doubts. By the time I hung up, my hands were shaking. The call did what she'd designed it to do. That night, watching Nash help Sloane with homework, I found myself wondering, was I asking too much? Was he too kind to admit he'd wanted something different? You okay? Nash asked, glancing up. Fine, I lied, but I wasn't fine. I was being gaslit, and knowing it didn't make it hurt less. 2 days later, I took the kids to Riverside Park. Saturday afternoon, warm for late June. Sloane was reading under a tree while her siblings played on the swings. Lorraine appeared like she'd materialized from smoke. What a lovely day, she said, walking toward us in white linen and sunglasses. I stood. What are you doing here? She ignored me completely. Her attention locked on Sloane, who'd looked up from her book with cautious eyes. Sloane, Lorraine said, and her voice was different. Softer, almost gentle. What a lovely name. What grade are you in? Sloane glanced at me. I nodded, too confused to stop this. 7th next year, ma'am. Lorraine smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it looked real. Smart girl. What are you reading? To Kill a Mockingbird for summer reading, one of my favorites. Lorraine sat beside Sloane, still not looking at me. You remind me of someone. How do you make sense of a woman who calls your children a burden one week, then gives your daughter a family heirloom the next? Lorraine reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. From it, she drew a delicate silver bracelet, tarnished with age. This was mine when I was your age, she said quietly. You have very careful eyes, Sloane, watching everything, making sure it's safe before you trust. She fastened the bracelet around my daughter's wrist with gentle hands. I knew someone like that once. Someone who learned early that the world doesn't always keep its promises. Sloane stared at the bracelet, speechless. I found my voice. Lorraine, you can't just... Atka, it suits her. Lorraine stood, finally meeting my eyes. Her expression was unreadable. Take care of that. It's real silver, family piece. Then she walked away, leaving us sitting there in stunned silence. The bracelet was real silver, tarnished with age. Whatever else Lorraine was doing, this gesture wasn't calculated. It was something else entirely. Sloane turned her wrist, watching light catch the delicate chain. Mom, why did she give me this? I don't know, baby. She looked sad, like she was remembering something that hurt. I pulled Sloane close, my mind racing. The woman who'd orchestrated a family boycott, who'd called my children a burden, who'd tried to convince me I was ruining her son's life. That same woman had just done something else entirely. She'd given my daughter a family heirloom and looked at her like she was seeing a ghost. Why did she look at me like that, Mom? Sloane asked quietly. I had no answer. Not then. I didn't know yet that Lorraine was seeing her own past in my daughter's careful eyes. That the someone she'd mentioned, the one who learned the world doesn't keep promises, was a 19-year-old girl who'd been pregnant and terrified and alone. I didn't know that Lorraine's cruelty came from a wound so deep it had shaped 40 years of her life, or that she was doing to me exactly what her family had done to her. All I knew was that my daughter wore a silver bracelet from a woman who seemed to hate and love her at the same time. And nothing about this made sense. I spent 3 days trying to make sense of Lorraine giving Sloane that bracelet, watching my daughter turn it on her wrist and ask questions I couldn't answer. Then Nash mentioned he'd left some wedding items at his parents' house that we'd need, and I volunteered to pick them up. Vernon answered the door himself, which was unusual. Lorraine always positioned herself as gatekeeper. Thea. He looked surprised, then something else. Relieved, maybe. Come in. Lorraine's at her charity committee meeting, won't be back for hours. I can come back if this is a bad time. No. He stepped aside, opening the door wider. Actually, I'm glad you're here. Alone. The Donovan home always felt like a museum. All tasteful neutrals and furniture you weren't supposed to actually sit on. But without Lorraine's presence, it felt different. Smaller, somehow. Like a stage set waiting for its lead actress to return, Vernon led me to the formal living room, where he'd already gathered Nash's things in a box, some framed photos, a trophy from his college basketball days, a stack of books he wanted for the new house we were moving into after the wedding. "Thank you for having these ready," I said. He nodded, then stood there, hands in his pockets, opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the door as if checking Lorraine might materialize. "Vernon, is something wrong?" He cleared his throat. "You're a nurse. You're trained to see patterns, aren't you?" "I suppose. The RSVPs. You've noticed." My chest tightened. "Noticed what?" "Don't." His voice was quiet. "Don't make me say it when you already know. Why do men who know the truth think dropping cryptic hints absolves them from actually saying it out loud? If you have something to tell me, Vernon, just tell me." He walked to the window, looking out at his perfectly manicured lawn. "This family, we've worked hard for our position, our standing in this community. It didn't come easy. I don't understand what that has to do with. We've sacrificed much to keep that standing." The words sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced them. "More than you know." I set down the box. "What does that mean? What did you sacrifice?" He turned to face me. And for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something besides passive observation in his expression. Guilt. Deep, decades-old guilt. "I can't," he said. "I've already said too much. You've said nothing. You've given me riddles. Just be patient with Lorraine. She has her reasons." "Reasons for what? For calling every relative and telling them not to come to our wedding? For orchestrating a family boycott? For those reasons?" He flinched. "You don't understand what she's been through. Then help me understand." "I can't." He looked away. "It's not my story to tell. You know the moment when someone's silence becomes louder than any confession. When you realize they're choosing not to help you, but you can watch her do this to me," I said quietly. "You can stand beside her while she destroys my wedding, calls my children a burden, makes my daughter think she's not wanted. You can do all that without saying a word to stop it. Thea, you know what she's doing is wrong, Vernon. I can see it in your face, but you won't tell me why she's doing it, and you won't tell her to stop. It's complicated. It's a choice." I picked up the box. "You're choosing her secrets over my children's feelings. You're choosing silence over honesty. That's not complicated. That's cowardice." His face went pale. "You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking for the truth. The truth would destroy her. And what do you think this is doing to me?" We stood there in his museum living room. The space between us filled with everything he wouldn't say. I could see it pressing against his lips, the secret he'd kept for however many years. But he'd lived with it this long. Whatever consequences the truth carried, he'd decided they were worse than watching his wife wage war on his son's future. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I wish things were different, but not enough to make them different." I walked to the door. He followed, carrying the box for me. At my car, he set it in the back seat with careful hands. "Just remember," he said quietly, "that people who hurt others are usually hurting themselves first." I drove around the corner before pulling over, hands shaking too much to keep driving. In the Notes app on my phone, I typed Vernon's exact words. "This family sacrificed much to keep it standing." I typed the way he'd said it, the weight on certain words, the guilt in his eyes. The deliberate choice of the word sacrificed. I typed his words exactly as he'd said them, finger pressing each letter like I was preserving evidence, which, I would learn, I was. Below that, I added, Vernon knows. Vernon is choosing not to tell. His silence is a choice, not ignorance. I stared at the screen, at those carefully chosen words. Sacrificed. Standing. Both felt important in ways I couldn't name yet. I didn't know that Lorraine had sacrificed a child to gain that standing. I didn't know that Vernon had been keeping that secret for over 30 years, that his guilt had rotted into habit, but I knew enough to save his words. And I knew enough to stop expecting honesty from anyone named Donovan. Vernon's cryptic words stayed in my notes app for 3 days while I waited for the final RSVPs to arrive. I knew what they would say. I just needed Nash to see it too. 74 invitations sent, 74 cards returned, and I held the last one in my hand, knowing what the answer would be before I opened it. "That's the last one?" Nash asked from across the kitchen table. It was nearly midnight, both of us too wired to sleep 2 weeks before our wedding. I slid my finger under the envelope flap. Inside, his second cousin Melissa had checked the box for decline. "Prior family obligation," her note said. "Well?" Nash's voice was tight. I set it on the pile with the others. "Regrets." He closed his eyes. "Let me count again. I must have missed one. You've counted 3 times. It's the same answer." But he gathered the cards anyway, sorting them into stacks by family branch. His mother's side, his father's side. Family friends his parents had insisted we invite. I watched his lips move as he tallied, watched the number climb. 74, he whispered finally. Jesus Christ, 74. I'd known the number for hours, had been sitting with it, feeling its weight. But watching Nash count them himself, watching the reality settle into his face, was different. "There has to be one yes somewhere," he said, spreading the cards out. "Someone, anyone." We went through them systematically. His Aunt Caroline, regrets. His Uncle Robert's family, regrets. Cousins, second cousins, his father's college roommate who'd been at every Donovan family event for 40 years. Regrets, regrets, regrets. 74 invitations, 74 refusals, 0 yeses. The arithmetic of hate is simpler than you think. "Read the excuses," I said quietly. Nash picked up a card. "Aunt Claire, prior commitment that weekend." Another. "Cousin Eric, prior commitment." Thea. Another. "Uncle James, prior work obligation." Thea. He set them down, picked up more. "Can't make it due to travel." Family obligation. Health concerns. Previous plans. I opened my laptop, pulled up Faye's spreadsheet. "Look at the dates they came in." Nash leaned over. The timeline showed clusters. His mother's side of the family all replied within the same 5-day window. His father's side came in the week after. The family friends last. "She called them," Nash said. His voice had gone flat. "She called them in order. Family first, then friends. Made sure no one broke ranks. Look at the language." I scrolled to where Faye had highlighted repeated phrases. Prior commitment appears 17 times. Family obligation, 12 times. They're all using the same script. If you've ever seen the moment someone realizes their own mother orchestrated their humiliation, you know the specific silence that follows. Nash sat back in his chair. stared at the cards covering our kitchen table, like a paper graveyard of relationships his mother had killed. I knew she was angry, he said. I knew she disapproved. But this, his hand swept across the table. This is calculated, organized. She didn't just tell people not to come. She made sure every single person said no. Yes, she spent weeks on this, calling relatives, convincing them, making sure— His voice cracked. Making sure you'd walk into an empty room on our wedding day. Not empty. My family will be there, but none of mine. He looked at me, and his eyes were raw. Do you want to cancel? I'd understand if you did. No, Thea, your mother doesn't get to make that decision for us. I reached across the table, took his hand. She orchestrated this whole thing hoping we'd give up, hoping you'd be embarrassed enough or I'd be hurt enough that we'd call it off. If we cancel now, she wins. She's already won. Look at this. He gestured at the cards. My entire family, gone. Then we build a new family, one that actually shows up. Nash stared at our joined hands, at the ring he'd given me in his car during a rainstorm, at the future we'd been trying to build while his mother systematically destroyed it. Then he pulled his laptop toward him, slammed it shut with a sound like a gunshot. What are you doing? He grabbed his phone. Calling her. Nash, it's almost 1 a.m. I don't care what time it is. He scrolled to his mother's contact, and I could see his hands had stopped shaking. Fury is steadier than hurt. She needs to hear this from me. Right now. I didn't stop him. He stood, walked to the window with the phone pressed to his ear. The cards stayed spread across the table between us. 74 pieces of evidence. 74 betrayals. 74 times someone had chosen Lorraine's approval over Nash's happiness. The phone rang once, twice. Mom, Nash said when she answered, and his voice was ice. We need to talk about the RSVPs. All 74 of them. I heard her voice through the phone, tinny and indistinct, but I caught the tone. Not surprised, not apologetic, defensive. Don't, Nash said, cutting her off. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. 74 invitations, 74 refusals. You think that's coincidence? Her voice rose. I still couldn't make out words, but I knew deflection when I heard it. Nash's free hand clenched into a fist. Did you call them? Yes or no? Did you tell my family not to come to my wedding? Silence. Then her voice again. And this time I caught one phrase. Their own choices. Nash's face went white. Their own choices, he repeated. 74 people all made the same choice the same week. That's what you're telling me. I watched my fiancé stand in our kitchen at 1 a.m, holding 74 RSVPs in one hand and a phone in the other, and realize his mother wouldn't even grant him the honesty of admitting what she'd done. Nash stepped onto the balcony and closed the door behind him. But I could still hear his mother's voice through the glass, awake, unsurprised, waiting for this call. I watched him grip the railing with his free hand, knuckles going white. Did you call them? His voice carried through the night air. All of them? Tell them not to come? Lorraine's response was too quiet for me to hear the words, but I caught the tone. Measured, controlled, not defensive. People make their own choices? Nash's voice rose. Mom, 74 people all made the same choice the same week. That's not coincidence. More calm words from her end. I pressed closer to the glass. I simply made sure family understood the situation. I heard her say, clear now. They're adults, Nash. They can decide for themselves what's appropriate. You told them not to come. Just admit it. I shared my concerns. If they agreed with me, Duh. 74 people agreed with you? Every single relative we invited? Silence on the other end. Then, sometimes the truth is uncomfortable, but that doesn't make it less true. Nash turned, and through the glass I saw his face. Not just angry anymore. Devastated. What truth? He asked quietly. That the woman I love isn't good enough for our family? That her children, 3 kids who've done nothing to you, are somehow beneath us? You're being dramatic. I'm being accurate. You convinced my entire family to boycott my wedding. What do you call it when someone won't admit what they did, but also won't pretend they didn't do it? If people chose not to attend, Lorraine said, her voice carrying through the speaker now. Perhaps you should ask yourself why that choice was so easy for them to make. Nash's hand tightened on the phone. You're not even going to apologize. For what? Speaking honestly to my family about my concerns? Nash, you're a teacher. You have a modest salary. 3 children. Stop. Just stop. His voice cracked. Those 3 children are going to be my family. They already are. And that's your choice. Just as it's other people's choice whether to support it. You made sure they didn't support it. I simply pointed out what they'd realize eventually. There it was. Not a denial. Not an apology. A confirmation wrapped in deflection. Proud underneath the careful words, Nash stared out at the dark street below. I can't believe you did this. I did what I thought was best for my son. No. You did what you thought would break us up. And when that didn't work, you made sure everyone in the family knew they should be ashamed of me for choosing her. Nash, I have to go. Don't be rash. He ended the call and stood there, phone in hand, shaking. I slid the door open. He turned and I watched my fiancé break. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet collapse into the chair, head in his hands. She didn't even try to deny it, he whispered. I knelt beside him. No, she's proud of it. She thinks she's protecting me. I know. How do I? He looked at me. How do I marry you knowing my mother did this? Knowing my whole family chose her over us? You marry me anyway. And we build something better. He pulled me close, and we stayed that way until the sky started to lighten. 3 days later, Nash picked Sloane up from school. I was at work when he called, his voice tight. We need to talk when you get home. What happened? Just come home. I found them in the kitchen. Sloane at the table, backpack still on. Nash standing behind her with his hands on her shoulders. Tell your mom what you told me, Nash said gently. Sloane's eyes were red. She'd been crying. Baby, what's wrong? I saw Nash's aunt at the grocery store yesterday. Her voice was small. After school, I was with Ethan and Sophie. Which aunt? The one with the gray hair. She was talking to another lady, loud enough that I could hear. If you've ever watched a 12-year-old ask if she's a complication, you know there's a specific kind of fury that follows. Protective and helpless at once. What did she say? I kept my voice calm. Sloane looked at Nash. He nodded. She said, this family doesn't need more complications. Nash could have done so much better. Sloane's voice broke. Am I a complication? I pulled her into my arms. No, God, no. But she said, she's wrong. She's cruel and wrong. She looked right at me when she said it, like she wanted me to hear. Nash's jaw clenched. Which aunt? What did she look like? I don't know her name. She was at that dinner. The one with the white hair. Aunt Margaret, Nash said, and his voice was ice. Sloane pulled back, looking between us. Why do they hate us so much? There was no good answer. No explanation that would make sense to a 12-year-old girl who'd done nothing except exist. They don't know you, I said finally. and they're letting someone else's fear make them cruel. Grandma Lorraine's fear? Smart kid. Too smart for her own good sometimes. Yes, why is she so scared of us? I don't know, baby. I really don't know. But I was starting to wonder if Opal did. Nash held my daughter like she was made of glass, promising things he couldn't guarantee. That she was one, that she mattered, that his family was wrong. Over Sloane's head, his eyes met mine, and I saw the question he couldn't ask out loud. How do I protect 3 children from an entire family's cruelty? And the answer neither of us wanted to admit. Maybe you can't. I held Sloane that night until she fell asleep, Nash's question echoing in my head. How do you protect children from an entire family's cruelty? Opal's text came 2 days later, and something about the timing felt less like coincidence than answer. Can we talk? Just you and me, it's important. We met at a coffee shop in Laurel, 20 minutes from Billings, where no one would recognize us. Opal was already in a corner booth when I arrived, looking older than I remembered. Tired, like she'd been carrying something heavy. Thank you for coming, she said, as I slid into the seat across from her. Your text said it was important. It is. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I asked you here because you deserve context I can't quite give you yet. I'm tired of cryptic warnings, Opal. Vernon gave me cryptic. Your sister gave me calculated cruelty. If you know something that explains why she's doing this, I do. She met my eyes. But the timing has to be right. You'll understand when you hear it. Why does everyone in this family think I need to earn information? Why can't someone just tell me the truth? Because the truth will hit differently depending on when you hear it. She leaned forward. Right now, you're angry. You should be angry. What Lorraine is doing is unconscionable. Then tell me why she's doing it. Not yet. What kind of secret requires you to suffer more before you're allowed to understand it? I started to stand. I don't have time for this. Lorraine wasn't always this person. Opal's voice stopped me. She used to be softer, open, before. Before what? Before she learned that the world punishes certain mistakes without mercy. Opal's hands tightened on her cup. She's terrified, Thea. Has been for 40 years. Terrified of what? Of me? Of 3 children who've never done anything to her? Of becoming the person she used to be? Of being judged the way she's judging you? I sat back down slowly. What does that mean? It means she knows exactly how it feels to be rejected by people who are supposed to love you. And that knowledge didn't make her kinder. It made her determined to never be on the receiving end again. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon and old books. Opal watched me process. Patient. You're saying someone hurt her. So now she hurts others? I'm saying pain doesn't always make people better. Sometimes it just teaches them where to aim when it's their turn to pull the trigger. That's not an excuse. No, it's an explanation. There's a difference. If someone's ever told you that understanding will come, but only after you've earned it through pain, you know the specific rage that breeds. Why won't you just tell me now? My voice came out harder than I intended. Whatever happened to her? Whatever made her this way? Why do I have to wait? Because you need to be angrier first. Opal said it matter-of-factly, like she was explaining a recipe. You need to feel the full weight of what she's doing. The wedding, the boycott, the way she's making your children feel unwanted. You need to sit in that fury until it burns clean. And then you'll need to understand. And the understanding will be complicated. And you'll resent that complication, but you'll need it anyway. You've thought a lot about this. I've been watching my sister repeat the same pattern for decades, watching her turn her pain into someone else's punishment. Opal's voice cracked slightly. I've been waiting for the right moment to break the cycle. This is it. By making me wait? By letting her keep hurting my family while you hold on to some secret that might explain it? Yes. No apology in her voice. Because if I tell you now, you'll want to forgive her too soon. You'll think understanding means she should be excused, and she shouldn't be. I'm not going to forgive her. Not now. But eventually, you'll need to decide what forgiveness means. And that decision will be clearer if you make it from the other side of anger. She reached across the table, took my hand. Her grip was firm, warm. What Lorraine did to you, she said quietly. Someone did to her first. Worse. The words landed like stones. Worse than this? Worse than turning an entire family against their own son? Much worse. And she was younger than your Sloane when it happened. I stared at her. Then why won't you just tell me? Because you need to be angrier first. Then you'll need to understand. Trust me on the order. What if I don't want to understand? What if I just want her to stop? She won't stop. Not until she's forced to face what she's running from. Opal squeezed my hand. You don't deserve this, but you need to understand why before you can be angrier. Or maybe so you can be angrier in the right direction. Opal's hand was warm around mine, her grip firm like she was holding me together, while also holding truth back. Both gestures felt equally necessary and equally cruel. When? I asked. When will you tell me? After the wedding, when you'll need it most. She stood, gathered her purse, left cash for both our coffees. Opal, you're stronger than she was, she said, looking down at me. That's what terrifies her. You're walking into exactly what she couldn't survive, and you're not breaking. She can't understand that kind of strength because she never had it. Then she walked out, leaving me in a coffee shop in Laurel with more questions than answers and the cold certainty that whatever Lorraine's secret was, it was big enough to explain 40 years of cruelty. I sat in the coffee shop for 10 minutes after Opal left, then drove straight to Lorraine's house. I'd driven past this house 100 times in the last 2 years, but I'd never once come here alone. Nash had always been with me, a buffer between his mother's ice and my careful politeness. Standing on her front porch that afternoon, hand raised to knock, I realized I was done being polite. The house was pristine. White columns, perfect landscaping, everything controlled. I knocked. Lorraine answered within seconds, like she'd been waiting. She wore cream linen, pearls at her throat. Complete composure. I wondered when you'd come, she said. Nash doesn't know you're here, does he? No. Good. Come in. She led me to the formal living room. Not the family room where we'd sat during previous visits, but the space reserved for important guests or enemies. The furniture was antique, uncomfortable, arranged for display. We sat across from each other, separated by a glass coffee table, so clean I could see my reflection in it. Have you ever walked into a room and known, instantly, that you were already defeated before you opened your mouth? I gripped my purse and made myself speak. Did you tell your family not to come to our wedding? Lorraine didn't flinch, just folded her hands and regarded me with cool assessment. The silence stretched. I could hear a clock ticking somewhere. Yes, she said finally. I did. No excuse. No softening. Just confirmation. Why? You know why. I want to hear you say it. She tilted her head slightly. Very well. Those 3 children are not the family I chose for my son. The words landed like slaps. They're children, I said, keeping my voice level. Your grandchildren. Biology doesn't make family, Thea. Choice does. And you choose to reject them? 3 kids who've done nothing to you? I choose to protect my son from a future he didn't plan, from responsibilities he didn't ask for. She leaned forward. Nash is a good man. Too good, perhaps. He sees a woman in need and 3 children without a father. And his instinct is to rescue. But that's not love. That's martyrdom. You need to understand something. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I wasn't going to give her that. Nash isn't rescuing anyone. He loves me. He loves my children. He thinks he does. Now. But in 5 years? 10? When he realizes he's spent his prime years raising another man's children instead of having his own. She shook her head. Men don't always know what they want until it's too late. So you decided for him. I'm giving him space to see clearly, without the pressure of family obligation forcing him toward a mistake, by making sure his entire family rejects us, by making sure people who love him honestly assess whether this marriage serves his best interests. Her calm was inhuman. Every word calculated, delivered without heat or hesitation. The kids ask about you, I said quietly. Sloane wants to know why Grandma doesn't like her. For the first time, something flickered in Lorraine's expression. Brief, almost imperceptible. I'm sure that's difficult, she said. For you, for them. They're children. They think they did something wrong. They didn't. But that doesn't change the situation. The situation you created. The situation that existed. She stood, smoothing her skirt. You seem to think I'm being cruel. I'm being realistic. Nash could have married someone without baggage, someone who'd give him his own children, his own fresh start. Instead, he's chosen a ready-made family that comes with complications. We're not complications, we're people. You're both. She walked to the window. I won't apologize for wanting better for my son. Better than people who love him? Better than a life defined by other people's choices. There's a moment in every war when both sides realize negotiation is over. This was that moment. I stood, picked up my purse. You won't come to the wedding, I said, not a question. No, none of your family will come. They've made their own decisions, based on what you told them. She turned from the window. Based on what they could see for themselves, once I pointed it out. I came here hoping you'd explain. Maybe apologize. Maybe show me some crack in this certainty that would help me understand. And now I see there's nothing to understand. You've decided. You're not conflicted or confused. You genuinely believe you're right. I am right. I walked to the door. She didn't follow. With my hand on the knob, I turned back. If you've decided, then so have I. Her eyebrows rose slightly, meaning I'm done seeking your approval. I'm done hoping you'll come around. You've made your choice about this family. Now I'm making mine. I walked out into the afternoon sun, got in my car, and drove away from that perfect house with its perfect lawn and its perfectly cruel occupant. I didn't know yet what I'd decided, only that something had shifted. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, something harder had taken root. Lorraine had declared war. I'd just accepted the terms. I drove away from Lorraine's house with my hands gripping the wheel and my decisions still forming. Something hard and clear, but not yet fully shaped. 2 days later, I saw Vernon before he saw me in the grocery store parking lot. For half a second, I thought about turning my cart around, but he'd already spotted me. Thea. He walked over, hands in his pockets, eyes not quite meeting mine. I was hoping to run into you. Were you? I wanted to warn you about the wedding. Your wife already made her position clear. I know, but I thought. He cleared his throat. If you go through with this wedding, don't expect the family to support it. I don't expect anything from your family anymore, Vernon. I'm just trying to help. Are you? I studied his face. The guilt was written there, plain as day. In the lines around his eyes, the way he couldn't hold my gaze. Or are you trying to make yourself feel better about staying silent? That's not fair. What are you hiding, Vernon? What's the secret everyone keeps dancing around? He turned away, looking at the mountains in the distance. Opened his mouth, closed it. Vernon, I can't, he said finally. I'm sorry. I just can't. I walked back to his car, leaving me standing in the parking lot with my groceries and my questions. Have you ever had to explain to children why adults who claim to love them suddenly don't want to see them anymore? That night, I gathered everyone in the living room. Nash, Sloane, Ethan, who was 9, Sophie, who was 7, all 5 of us. We need to talk about the wedding, I said. Sloane sat up straighter. Ethan looked worried. Sophie climbed into Nash's lap. Nash's family, I continued carefully, has decided they don't want to come. Not because of anything you did. Not because you're not wonderful. But because they've made a choice about what they think our family should look like. Because of us, Sloane said quietly. The 3 complications. Nash flinched. You're not... It's okay. Sloane's voice was steady, older than 12. We know that's what they think. So, here's what I want to know, I said. Do we still want this wedding? All of us, together. Or do we wait? Or do we do something else entirely? We vote? Ethan asked. We vote. Sloane spoke first. We don't need them. We have each other. Sophie looked up at Nash. Do you still want to marry Mommy? More than anything, Nash said, his voice rough. Then I vote yes, Sophie said. Ethan nodded. Me too. When do I get to vote? Nash asked. And despite everything, I almost smiled. Now. Yes, absolutely yes. They all looked at me. Then we're getting married, I said. Next week, with or without Nash's family. Because we're already a family, and we don't need anyone's permission to make it official. Nash reached across the coffee table. I took his hand. Sloane put hers on top, then Ethan, then Sophie. That moment, 5 hands in the center of the table, choosing each other, is one I'll carry forever. 3 days before the wedding, a package appeared on our doorstep. No return address. Beautifully wrapped in silver paper with a white ribbon, I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen counter. Nash was at work. The kids were at school. I was alone with this unexpected thing. Inside the silver paper was a box. Inside the box, wrapped in tissue, was a crystal vase. Simple, elegant, expensive, and tucked into the tissue paper, a small card. The handwriting was careful. Anonymous. No signature. I'm sorry I'm not brave enough to come, it read. I stood in my kitchen, holding this gift from someone who'd chosen kindness over loyalty to Lorraine's campaign. Someone who'd sent a wedding present while refusing to attend. Someone who wanted me to know that not everyone in that family had chosen cruelty, but not brave enough to say it out loud, not brave enough to break ranks, not brave enough to be counted among the people who actually showed up. You need to understand. Hope is dangerous when you've been hurt this badly, because part of me wanted to read that note and feel grateful. Wanted to clutch this evidence that someone in the Donovan family didn't hate us. Wanted to believe it meant something, but another part of me, the part that had walked away from Lorraine's house accepting war, knew better. Anonymous kindness was still cowardice. A gift sent in secret was still a gift sent instead of a presence. This person, whoever they were, had chosen safety over solidarity. I couldn't even be angry about it. Just sad. I read the note again. I'm sorry I'm not brave enough to come. At least they were honest about their cowardice. I set the vase on the counter, tucked the card into my pocket. When Nash got home, I'd show him. We'd wonder together who'd sent it. We'd add it to the list of mysteries we couldn't solve, secrets we weren't allowed to know. But for now, I stood in my kitchen 5 days before my wedding, holding evidence that somewhere in the Donovan family, someone still had a conscience, just not enough courage to use it. The wedding was in 5 days. The chairs on Nash's side would be empty. Except for this ghost of what could have been, if even one person had been brave enough to choose love over fear. The anonymous gift sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days. Then wedding morning arrived, and I stopped thinking about who'd sent it. On the morning of my wedding, I woke up at 5:47 a.m. and checked my phone before I even opened my eyes. No messages, no last-minute apologies. No one from the Donovan family had suddenly grown a spine. I was in a hotel suite with Sloane and Faye, who'd arrived at 6 with coffee and bagels and makeup. Put the phone down, Faye said, not looking up from where she was steaming my dress. I'm just checking to see if anyone reached out. I know. She hung the dress on the bathroom door. They're not going to, Thea. I just thought maybe one of them would reach out. Sloane sat cross-legged on the bed, watching me with those careful eyes. She wore the junior bridesmaid dress we'd picked out together. Give me the phone, Faye said, holding out her hand. You're getting married in 3 hours. I handed it over. She tucked it into her purse with the firmness of someone who'd worked too many code blues to tolerate nonsense. The morning moved in pieces. Makeup, hair. The dress, simple, elegant, perfect. Sloane sat beside me while someone pinned flowers into my hair. Mom, she said softly, you look like a princess. I took her hand. 12 years old and already learning that love isn't enough to change people's minds. When I picked up my bouquet, the card from the anonymous gift fell from my bag. I'm sorry I'm not brave enough to come. Faye saw it. Squeezed my shoulder. You've probably never counted empty chairs at your own wedding. Canyon Creek Garden venue was beautiful. June roses climbing white lattice, string lights waiting for evening. A garden gate where guests would enter, and on the right side of the aisle, an entire section with Donovan family reserved signs. I counted them from the bride's room. 23 chairs, 23 places set for people who'd chosen Lorraine's approval over Nash's happiness. Not one of them had come. Faye caught me looking through the window. Don't, she said. I'm not. You're counting. 23. Stop. But I couldn't. Those empty chairs weren't just absence. They were a statement. A public declaration that an entire family had rejected us in unison. Guests were arriving on my side. My father. My sister. Friends from the hospital. People who showed up when they said they would. On Nash's side, empty chairs and uncomfortable silence. I heard whispers. I thought his family was coming. Did something happen? All of them? Not even his parents? What does it mean when an entire family chooses not to witness the happiness of someone they're supposed to love? The wedding coordinator knocked. Young, nervous, trying to smile. We're ready to start, she said. The groom's family section. Should we remove the reserved signs? Leave them, I said. But leave them. I want everyone to see exactly what this family chose to do. Faye's hand found mine. Sloane stood on my other side. You don't have to do this, Faye whispered. We can postpone. I'm marrying him. Today. With or without witnesses from his side. The music started. Soft guitar, the processional we'd chosen. Through the window, I watched the coordinator open the garden gate. This was the moment. In a normal wedding, the groom's family would enter now. Parents first, then extended family. Filling those chairs with love, I watched the gate, waited, knew better than to hope, but couldn't stop myself from looking. Maybe Vernon would come, guilt finally outweighing fear. Maybe one cousin would break ranks. Maybe whoever sent that anonymous gift would find courage. The gate stayed open. Empty. The music played. No one came through. Guests on my side turned to look, realized what they were seeing. The whispers got louder. There's a specific kind of silence that comes from 23 empty chairs arranged in perfect rows. It's the silence of a statement. Of a family declaring in the loudest possible way that you are not wanted. Your children are not wanted. And nothing you do will ever be enough, even Vernon. Vernon, who'd warned me with guilt in his eyes, who'd admitted his own cowardice, who'd known the truth for over 30 years. Even he had chosen Lorraine over his son. Not one person from Nash's family had been brave enough to break the boycott. The processional music shifted. My cue. Faye handed me my bouquet. Sloane kissed my cheek. Ready? Faye asked. No, I said honestly. But I'm doing it anyway. I stepped out of the bride's room into the garden, where my future husband waited at an altar flanked by his completely absent family. The gate stood open behind me. Empty. Still empty. The music played. No one came. I'd known they wouldn't. Had accepted it. Had made peace with marrying into a family that rejected me. But knowing and seeing are different things. And as I stood there, bouquet in hand, about to walk down an aisle where half the guests were missing, I understood something Lorraine probably wanted me to understand. She'd made sure everyone would see. The empty chairs, the abandoned section, the public proof that I wasn't worth showing up for. She'd turned my wedding into a display of her power, and the worst part was knowing that somewhere, she was probably satisfied. I walked down the aisle, past those 23 empty chairs, said my vows, and became Nash's wife. The ceremony blurred by. The ring, the kiss, the applause. But the empty chairs stayed with me. Even as we walked back up the aisle, married now, the reception unfolded in the garden. Dinner service, toasts that carefully avoided mentioning the Donovan family absence, our first dance while guests watched with pitying expressions. I smiled until my face ached. Nash held me like he was afraid I might disappear. What does it mean when your wedding day becomes less about celebration and more about survival? During the cake cutting, I saw her. Opal stood at the garden's edge, partially hidden by a flowering dogwood tree. She wore a simple blue dress, not formal enough for a wedding. Her silver hair caught the late afternoon sun. She was far enough away that most guests wouldn't notice her, but I did. Our eyes met across 50 feet of celebration. She came. My heart leapt. One Donovan had defied Lorraine's edict and shown up to witness, but she didn't move closer, didn't wave, didn't smile, just stood there, watching, her expression unreadable. I took a step toward her, but Nash's hand on my arm stopped me. He hadn't seen her yet. He was focused on the photographer positioning us for the shot. When I looked back at the dogwood tree, Opal was gone. Did she really stand there? Or did I imagine her? Had she come to show support, or to report back to Lorraine? The questions spiraled through my mind as I smiled for photos and fed Nash a bite of vanilla cake. Later, As the sun set and string lights illuminated the garden, I found Nash near the empty chairs. Someone had moved them to the side, trying to make them less obvious, but they were still there, still empty. "I saw your grandmother," I told him. "During the cake cutting. She was watching from the garden's edge, but she left before I could reach her." Nash's jaw tightened. "She watched, but didn't stay? She didn't even come close enough to be seen by most people. So she observed Mama's boycott publicly, but allowed herself a private viewing." He laughed without humor. "That's very Opal, following the letter of Lorraine's law while bending it just enough to satisfy her conscience." I took his hand. The wedding band felt new and strange on his finger. "We knew it would be like this. Knowing doesn't make it easier." "No," I agreed. "But we're married now. We made it through." He pulled me close, and I rested my head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Around us, our guests danced and celebrated. The empty chairs sat in the shadows. Somewhere in Laurel, Lorraine was probably satisfied with the statement she'd made that day. But here, in this moment, I felt something I didn't expect to feel on a wedding day, marked by such obvious rejection. "Peace. We are enough," I whispered against Nash's shirt. "Just us. We are enough." I didn't respond with words, just held me tighter as the music played and the night deepened, and our wedding celebration continued despite the 23 people who'd chosen not to witness it. Tomorrow, we'll face whatever comes next. Tonight, we are enough. 3 weeks after the wedding, I almost believed we'd found peace. The boxes are mostly unpacked now. Our new home in Missoula smells like fresh paint and possibility. Nash's clothes hang beside mine in the closet. Family photos line the hallway. The kids have settled into summer routines, and most mornings I wake up thinking this might actually work. This blended family, this new chapter, this life we're building despite the Donovan family's absence. Most mornings, but today, folding laundry in the afternoon sunlight, Vernon's words keep circling back. The sacrifice I made to keep standing. He said it at Faye's house, his voice heavy with something I couldn't name. What sacrifice? What did he know that I didn't? I shake out one of Nash's work shirts, try to focus on ordinary tasks. This is what peace looks like, I tell myself. This quiet domesticity. "Mom, can I go to Carter's house?" My son appears in the doorway, backpack already on. "Did you finish your summer reading?" "Most of it." "Finish all of it, then we'll talk." I groans, but trudges upstairs. Nash's daughter Sloane calls from the kitchen that she's making lemonade. These are the sounds of home. These are the rhythms I wanted. So why does my chest feel tight? You know that feeling when everything's going right, but your gut keeps whispering that it won't last? That's where I live now, in the space between gratitude for what we have and dread about what might come next. The wedding was 3 weeks ago. The empty chairs, the public rejection, Opal's mysterious appearance, all of it feels like it happened to someone else, except it didn't. And then, there's the thing I can't stop thinking about. Last week, at the Billings Farmers Market, I saw Lorraine examining tomatoes 2 stalls down. My first instinct was to leave, avoid another confrontation. But before I could move, Sloane ran up to show me lavender honey she'd found. "Look, Mom," she said, holding up the jar. Lorraine turned. Our eyes met. I braced for the cold dismissal, the cutting remark. Instead, she looked at Sloane and smiled. Not warm, exactly, but genuine. She nodded at my stepdaughter and said, "That's the good kind. Arlene makes the best honey in the county." Then she paid for her tomatoes and left. I stood there, trying to process what had just happened. The woman who orchestrated a family-wide boycott of our wedding had just offered unsolicited advice about honey to the child whose mother married her son against her wishes. It made no sense. Nash noticed my confusion. "What's wrong?" "Your mother just spoke to Sloane, kindly. Probably didn't realize who she was, but I knew better." Lorraine's eyes had met mine first. She knew exactly who we were, and she chose, in that moment, to be kind. Why would a woman who orchestrated a family boycott suddenly smile at the child she'd rejected? The question has haunted me all week. I've turned it over during grocery shopping, while making dinner, in quiet moments before sleep. It doesn't fit the pattern. Lorraine is many things: controlling, manipulative, vindictive. She's consistent. She doesn't do random acts of kindness toward people she's decided to punish. So what changed? Nash comes home at 6, kisses my cheek, loosens his tie. "This feels like home now," he says, surveying the living room where his daughter and my son are arguing over the TV remote with the casual hostility of actual siblings. "Yes, honey," I tell him. "This is home, and I mean it." Even with the questions circling, even with Vernon's cryptic words echoing, even with Lorraine's inexplicable smile haunting me. This is home. I'm chopping vegetables for dinner when the phone rings. Unknown number, local area code. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. "Hello? Thea, it's Opal." My hand stills on the cutting board. Opal, Nash's grandmother. The woman who watched our wedding from a distance but didn't stay. "We need to talk," she continues, her voice different than I remember. Not the gentle, passive tone from family dinners. This is sharper, certain, urgent. "About what?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow?" "My cottage, 2 o'clock. My heart pounds. "Opal, what's this about?" Silence stretches. When she speaks again, her voice carries a weight I've never heard before. Calm, certain, and unbearably sad. "It's time you knew the truth." "What truth?" "Some truths arrive like earthquakes. You feel the tremor before the ground splits open." "About Lorraine," Opal says quietly. "About why she is the way she is. About what happened 40 years ago that made her into the woman you know. I've kept her secret long enough. You deserve to understand." The knife trembles in my hand. Nash is in the living room, laughing at something Sloane said. The vegetables sit half-chopped on the cutting board. Outside, the Montana summer evening is golden and peaceful, and I'm holding the phone, listening to Opal's sad, certain voice, knowing that whatever she's about to tell me will shatter this fragile peace we've built. "Tomorrow," I hear myself say. 2 o'clock. "Come alone," Opal adds. This is a conversation Nash isn't ready to hear. Not yet. She hangs up. I stand in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, hands shaking with the weight of truth I haven't yet learned but already fear. Opal's cottage smelled like lavender and old books, and I sat on her worn sofa trying not to shake. The drive from Missoula took 40 minutes. I told Nash I was running errands, meeting Faye for lunch. The lie tasted bitter, but Opal's words echoed, "Come alone." This is a conversation Nash isn't ready to hear, so here I am, 2 o'clock on the dot, watching Nash's grandmother pour tea with trembling hands. Her cottage is small but tidy, filled with the kind of comfortable clutter that comes from decades in one place. Photographs line the mantel. Crocheted blankets drape over chairs. Sunlight filters through lace curtains, casting patterns on the hardwood floor. Opal hands me a cup. Earl Grey, judging by the scent. She settles into the armchair across from me, and for a long moment, we just sit in silence. My sister wasn't always cruel, she finally says. Once, she was the one being judged. I set down my tea, untouched. What do you mean, Lorraine? Opal's voice is soft but steady. Before she became the woman you know, before the money, the control, the perfect facade, before all of that, she was just a girl who made a mistake. What kind of mistake? Opal meets my eyes. She was 19, pregnant, unmarried. The words hang in the air between us. 1985. I calculate quickly. Montana. Small town values and smaller town gossip. What happened? I ask, though part of me already knows the answer won't be good. Everything you'd expect, and worse. Opal's hands shake as she lifts her own teacup. Our family was traditional, conservative, the kind of people who cared more about appearances than compassion. When Lorraine told our parents she was pregnant, they gave her two choices: marry the father immediately or leave. And the father? Gone before she even knew she was pregnant. Summer fling, promised he'd call, never did. Story as old as time. You have to understand what it meant to be an unwed mother in 1985 Montana. It wasn't just scandal, it was exile. So what did she do? Opal stands slowly, walks to a small desk in the corner, opens a drawer. She pulls out a photograph, faded and creased, and hands it to me. The girl in the photo can't be more than 19. She stands alone in what looks like a parking lot, one hand resting on her visibly pregnant belly. Her eyes stare directly at the camera, and in them I see something I've never seen in Lorraine's face. Vulnerability, fear, loneliness so deep it radiates through decades-old photo paper. That's her, Opal says quietly. 5 months pregnant. Our parents had already stopped speaking to her. Our brothers pretended she didn't exist. I took that photo in the parking lot of the clinic where she went for checkups. I was the only one who would even drive her. I stare at the photograph. This fragile, frightened girl became the woman who orchestrated a family boycott of my wedding, who left 23 empty chairs as a monument to her power, who made sure everyone knew exactly what she thought of me and my children. They made her give the baby away, Opal continues. Adoption. Closed records. Our parents arranged everything. Said it was for the best, that she could start over, that no one ever had to know. And then, her voice breaks. Then they never spoke to her again, even after the baby was gone, even after she'd done exactly what they demanded. They cut her off completely, said she'd brought shame on the family. My chest tightens. How long? 3 years. 3 years of silence. Then our father died, and at the funeral, our mother looked right through her, like she was glass. Before I tell you what happened to that baby, are you still with me? Comment A, if understanding her trauma changes things, or B, if it doesn't. Add one short reason why. A quick note. The next part includes some fictionalized details to deepen the emotional impact. The lesson is what matters. She met Vernon a year after the funeral, Opal says. He was older, established, wealthy. He knew nothing about her past. She married him, moved to Laurel, became Mrs. Lorraine Donovan, erased every trace of the girl in that photograph, built this perfect life, this perfect family, this perfect image. And she's lived in terror ever since that someone will find out. The pieces fall into place. The control, the obsession with appearances, the absolute intolerance for anything that might crack the facade. She's terrified. I whisper. Opal nods. Terrified that if she accepts your children, if she acknowledges your past, someone will remember hers. That Nash will find out. That Vernon will leave. That the perfect life she built will collapse just like it did when she was 19. How do you forgive someone who became the monster that once destroyed her? I look at the photograph again. That frightened girl, alone in a parking lot. And I think about Lorraine at the farmer's market, smiling at Sloane for just a moment before remembering herself. A crack in the armor, a glimpse of the person she might have been if her family had chosen love over judgment. The victim had become the villain, and the cycle was repeating. Why are you telling me this now? I ask. Opal takes the photograph from my hands, looks at it one more time, then meets my eyes with a steadiness that makes my breath catch. Because she's doing to you what her family did to her. I stood in Sloane's doorway that night, watching her sleep, and realized I held a weapon that could destroy Lorraine the way she'd tried to destroy us. The drive home from Opal's cottage had passed in a blur. I'd sat through dinner with Nash and the kids, smiled at the right moments, all while Opal's words echoed in my head. She's doing to you what her family did to her. The victim became the villain, the cycle repeating. Now it's past midnight. The house is quiet. Everyone's asleep except me. Sloane shifts under her blankets, murmurs something, settles back into stillness. She's 12, innocent. She has no idea that her grandmother once stood where I'm standing now. Young, frightened, judged for choices that seemed to end her world. I could tell everyone. The thought arrives fully formed, seductive in its simplicity. I could tell Nash, tell the extended family. Let it slip at the next gathering that Lorraine Donovan, pillar of the community, once gave birth to a baby out of wedlock and gave it away. Let her feel what public shame tastes like. Let her experience the isolation she inflicted on us. Let her count empty chairs at her own events. My hands grip the doorframe. Outside, Montana summer night sounds drift through the open window. Crickets, distant traffic, wind through pine trees. But then I'd be just like her, I whisper to the darkness, punishing someone for their past. Except it's not just her past, is it? It's her present. Her active, ongoing campaign of cruelty. The wedding boycott, the anonymous gift, the 23 empty chairs. The way she looked through me like I was nothing. She's still doing it. Still choosing judgment over love. Still inflicting pain. And I want her to hurt the way she hurt us. The realization hits me like cold water. Not a hypothetical thought experiment. I genuinely, viscerally want to see Lorraine suffer. I want to watch her perfect facade crack. I want her to feel powerless and exposed and small. The desire is real, and it frightens me. Would that make me strong? I ask the empty hallway. Or would it make me cruel? What's the difference between justice and revenge when they look exactly the same from the outside? I pull Sloane's door almost closed and walk to my bedroom. Nash is asleep, one arm flung over my pillow. I stand there watching him breathe. This man whose mother's trauma became our trauma. My phone buzzes on the nightstand. A text message, 12:47 a.m., from a number I don't recognize. This is Vernon. Can we meet tomorrow? Coffee shop on Higgins, 10 a.m. Please, it's important. I stare at the screen. Vernon, Lorraine's husband, the man who warned me about the sacrifice I'd have to make. I text back one word, okay. The coffee shop smells like espresso and cinnamon rolls. Vernon sits in a corner booth, looking older than I've ever seen him. His hands shake as he lifts his coffee cup. Gray stubble shadows his jaw. His eyes are red-rimmed. I slide into the seat across from him. You texted at almost 1 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. He sets down his cup. Opal told me she spoke with you. About Lorraine. About what happened. I say nothing. Wait, I've known for over 30 years, Vernon says quietly. And I said nothing. The confession hangs between us. 34 years. 3.5 decades of silence while Lorraine built her fortress of control and judgment. While she became the monster that once destroyed her. Opal told you? I ask. Before we got married. She thought I should know. Thought maybe I could help Lorraine heal. He laughs, bitter and sharp. But I didn't help. I just kept the secret. Told myself it was protecting her, that the past was the past. You need to understand something. Silence isn't neutrality. It's always a choice. You knew, I say slowly. And you still warned me away from the wedding? Vernon meets my eyes. I knew. And I watched her destroy every relationship that threatened her facade. I watched her cut off friends, alienate family members, control Nash's life. I warned you because I knew what she'd do. But I never stopped her. Never stood up to her. Never told her that her pain didn't give her permission to inflict pain on others. Why not? Because I'm a coward. His voice breaks. Because it was easier to keep the peace than to face the war. Because every time I thought about confronting her, I'd tell myself one more day, one more week, one more year. And 30 years passed. I think about the empty chairs, the anonymous harassment, the way Lorraine smiled at Sloane for one moment before remembering herself, the sacrifice you told me about, I say. At Faye's house, you meant your silence. He nods. The sacrifice I made to keep standing. But all I did was enable her cruelty. All I did was let the cycle continue. Sometimes the people who warn you away from danger are the ones who've been standing by watching it happen for years. Vernon leans forward. His eyes are desperate, pleading. I know what Opal told you gives you power. I know you could destroy Lorraine with it. Maybe you should. Maybe that's what justice looks like. But whatever you do, don't do it for me. Don't let my cowardice dictate your choice. He reaches across the table, stops just short of touching my hand. Don't let me be a coward for another 30 years. Say what I couldn't. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy stock, and the return address made my hands go cold. Donovan Family Charitable Foundation, 11 months. 11 months since the wedding, since the empty chairs, since Opal's revelation. 11 months since Vernon begged me to say what he couldn't. 11 months of silence from the Donovan family. Until now, I turn the envelope over. The paper is expensive, the kind that announces wealth before you open it. The foundation seal is embossed in gold. My name and Nash's are printed in elegant calligraphy. Mr. and Mrs. Nash Donovan. She's never called me Mrs. Donovan before. Nash comes up behind me. What's that? I slide my finger under the flap. Break the seal. Inside, the invitation is printed on matching cream cardstock with gold lettering. The Donovan Family Charitable Foundation cordially invites you to our 25th anniversary gala. I read aloud. Saturday, June 15th, 7 o'clock, the Heights Country Club Grand Ballroom, Billings, black tie. Nash sets down his coffee mug. She invited us, both of us, by name. Why would she invite us after everything she did? I stare at the invitation. The calligraphy is perfect. Everything about it screams control, money, social power. This is Lorraine's world, her territory, her stage. I don't know, I say quietly. But she doesn't do anything without a reason. Nash takes the invitation, studies it like he's looking for hidden messages. Maybe it's an olive branch. Maybe she's trying to make amends. But I'm thinking about the girl in the parking lot, pregnant and alone. About the perfect life Lane built to hide the shame and the terror she lives in, that someone will discover the truth. She's setting a stage, I think. The question is, for what? The 25th anniversary gala isn't just a party. It's the social event of the year in Billings. Everyone who matters will be there. Business leaders, politicians, society families, the press. It's where Lorraine displays her power, her wealth, her perfect image, and she's inviting us into it. You know how predators work. They invite you into their territory because that's where they feel safest. This isn't reconciliation. This is Lorraine forcing us onto her ground, surrounding us with her people, displaying her social dominance as a warning. She knows I have her secret. Vernon must have told her that Opal talked to me, and this invitation is her response, a demonstration of power, a reminder of who controls what. Come to my gala, the invitation says. Walk into my ballroom, surrounded by people who worship me. See what you're up against. Are we going? Nash asks. I look at my husband, who chose me over his mother's approval, who sat through our wedding watching empty chairs, who built a life with me despite the cost. Yes, I say, we're going, because if Lorraine wants to set a stage, I can walk onto it. 4 days before the gala, Sloane comes home from school with a strange expression. Not upset, exactly. More confused, maybe worried. She finds me in the kitchen, sets down her backpack, chews her bottom lip the way she does when she's deciding whether to say something. What's wrong? I ask. I saw Grandma Lorraine today, at the grocery store near school. I set down the dish towel. Sloane rarely talks about Lorraine anymore. After the wedding boycott, after the year of silence, she stopped asking why her grandmother didn't want to see her. Did she say anything to you? No, she didn't see me, but I heard her on the phone. Sloane sits at the kitchen table. She sounded scared. Scared of what? I don't know. She was talking about the gala, about making sure everything was perfect. And then she said something about family honor and what must never be revealed. My heart skips. Those exact words? Sloane nods, like she was really worried about something coming out. I sit down across from my stepdaughter. She's 13 now, perceptive in the way teenagers are when they've learned that adults keep secrets. What do you do when the person who hurt you hands you an invitation to the exact moment you could destroy them? Mom? Sloane's voice pulls me back. What is it? What's she worried about? I'm not sure. I lie, but I am sure. Lorraine is still consumed by fear of her past being exposed, still terrified that someone will find out about the baby she gave away 40 years ago. Still building her perfect facade higher and higher, hoping no one will see the cracks. And the gala, her moment of triumph, her annual display of power, is exactly where that facade could shatter, if I chose to shatter it. I've carried this secret for 11 months. 11 months of weighing Vernon's plea against my own conscience. 11 months of feeling the weight of the weapon Opal handed me. And now Lorraine has invited me onto her stage, surrounded by everyone she wants to impress, giving me the perfect opportunity to reveal what she's spent decades hiding. Sloane watches me carefully. She's smart enough to know something bigger is happening. When your child asks if you're going to fight back, the silence before you answer says everything. "Are you going to say something, Mom?" she asks quietly. I look at my stepdaughter. At this girl who's been rejected by her grandmother for nothing more than existing, for being part of my family, for representing the very thing Lorraine fears most: acceptance of imperfect families, of children from previous relationships, of love that doesn't fit her narrow definition of acceptable. Sloane's question hangs in the air. I don't answer yet. I'd been in this ballroom once before, the night Lorraine first made it clear I wasn't good enough for her family. 2 years ago, at a foundation fundraiser. I'd come with Nash, newly dating, hopeful. Lorraine had introduced me to guests as Nash's friend, even after he'd corrected her twice. By the end of the night, I'd understood. This world was hers, and I would never have a place in it. Now I'm walking back into that same ballroom, and everything has changed. Nash's hand rests on the small of my back as we enter. The Heights Country Club is decorated in white and gold. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, ice sculptures. Over 50 guests fill the space, Montana's wealthiest and most influential. State senators, business owners, old money families. The people Lorraine has spent decades impressing. The people who believe the story she's told them about who she is. Returning to the venue where Lorraine first humiliated me should feel like walking back into enemy territory. But tonight, standing here in my black silk gown with my husband beside me, I feel something different. Power, because I know what none of these people know. I hold the truth about Lorraine's past, about the girl she was before the money and the marriage and the carefully constructed image. One sentence from me, just one, and this entire performance crumbles. Lorraine spots us from across the room. She's wearing midnight blue, pearls at her throat, her silver hair styled in elegant waves. She looks every inch the philanthropic leader, the respected matriarch, except it's all built on lies. She excuses herself from a cluster of guests and walks toward us, Vernon trailing behind her. Her smile is bright, warm, perfect for the audience watching. "Thea! Nash!" Her voice carries across the room, loud enough for nearby guests to turn and look. "I'm so glad you could come." She embraces Nash first, holds him like she hasn't spent the past year orchestrating his isolation. Then she turns to me, and for just a second, her eyes meet mine with pure ice. Then the mask is back. She kisses my cheek, her perfume expensive and cloying. As she pulls away, her lips barely move. Smile. Everyone's watching. You know what it's like to smile while your enemy kisses your cheek and whispers threats no one else can hear. I smile. Flash my teeth. Play my part. "Thank you for inviting us," I say, loud enough for the guests who've moved closer. "The ballroom looks beautiful, doesn't it?" Lorraine slips her arm through mine like we're old friends, like she didn't leave 23 empty chairs at my wedding. "Come, let me introduce you to some people." Vernon hangs back, one hand in his pocket, the other holding scotch. He looks older than he did at the coffee shop. Tired. When I catch his eye, he looks away quickly, shame written across his face. Lorraine guides us through the crowd, introducing Nash and me to foundation donors and board members. Every introduction is warm, gracious, performative. My son and his lovely wife. Such a beautiful couple. We're so proud of them. No one mentions the wedding boycott. No one acknowledges the year of silence. Lorraine has rewritten the narrative, and everyone is reading from her script. A woman in diamonds approaches, champagne glass in hand. Mrs. Sheffield, mid-60s, dripping wealth and curiosity, one of the foundation's major donors. Mrs. Donovan, I've been meaning to tell you. The foundation's work with foster children is simply inspiring. How did you become so passionate about family services? Lorraine's smile doesn't waver. I've always believed that every child deserves a stable, loving home. Family is everything. The irony sits bitter on my tongue. Family is everything. Unless they don't meet your standards. Unless they come from previous relationships. Unless they remind you of your own past mistakes. I take a sip of wine. Let the conversations flow around me. Nash's hand finds mine, squeezes gently. He's uncomfortable here, but he's staying for me. How many versions of yourself can you be in one room? The victim, the threat, the guest, the weapon. I'm all of them at once. The woman Lorraine humiliated in this very ballroom 2 years ago. The person holding the secret that could destroy her. The guest sipping wine and making polite conversation. The weapon choosing whether or not to fire. Across the room, Lorraine laughs at something a state senator says. She looks so confident, so secure in her power. She invited us here to remind me of what I'm up against. Her wealth, her influence, her control over this world. But she miscalculated. Because seeing her here, surrounded by people who worship the lie she's built, only crystallizes my choice. Mrs. Sheffield moves closer to Lorraine, joined by several other guests. Mrs. Donovan, I was just telling Patricia. We'd love to hear more about your journey. From your humble beginnings to building this foundation, becoming such a pillar of our community. It's such an inspiring story. Lorraine's smile freezes for half a second. Her eyes find mine across the circle of guests, and in them I see it. Fear. Oh, I don't like to talk about myself, she demurs. Nonsense, Mrs. Sheffield insists. Tell us about your early years, before you met Vernon. Where you came from, what shaped you into the woman you are today. There's a specific pressure that comes from holding words that could shatter everything. Feeling them press against your teeth, my hand tightens around my wine glass until my knuckles turn white. One sentence. Just one sentence. And I could tell them about Lorraine's humble beginnings. About the girl who got pregnant at 19, unmarried, in 1985 Montana. About the family who disowned her, the baby she gave away, the past she's spent 40 years hiding. One sentence, and Lorraine's entire fabricated life would crumble. Lorraine's voice filled the ballroom, smooth and practiced, as she began her speech about upholding family standards. Mrs. Sheffield and the other guests had dispersed to find their seats when the event coordinator announced it was time for the Foundation President's annual address. Lorraine stood at the podium on the small stage at the front of the ballroom, looking regal and composed. A spotlight illuminated her perfectly styled hair, her elegant gown, her practiced smile. Nash's hand found mine under the table. He squeezed gently, a silent question. Are you okay? I didn't answer. I wasn't sure anymore. Thank you all for being here tonight, Lorraine began, her voice warm and gracious. 25 years ago, Vernon and I founded this organization with a simple belief. That family is the cornerstone of a healthy society. That children deserve stability, security, and moral guidance from the adults who raise them. Applause rippled through the crowd. I sat perfectly still. Over these 25 years, we've placed over 300 children in loving homes. We've provided resources to struggling families. We've upheld a standard of excellence in every placement we make. She paused. Let the weight of her words settle. Because a family must have standards, we cannot compromise our values for convenience. My breath catches. Standards. Values. The words she's been weaponizing against me for 2 years. The work we do requires difficult decisions, Lorraine continues. It requires us to ask hard questions about what's best for children. And sometimes, her eyes sweep across the audience, land on me for just a heartbeat. Sometimes it requires us to refuse to accept what dishonors us. Refuse to accept what dishonors us. The exact phrase Opal said Lorraine's family used when they disowned her. The same judgment that forced her to give away her baby and erased her from their lives. And now she's standing at a podium, using those same words to justify what she did to me, to Nash, to our children. You know that moment when silence becomes louder than any scream could ever be. I'm in that moment now. Sitting at this table, listening to Lorraine preach about family values she abandoned the moment they required her to face her own past. Watching her perform righteousness while hiding the truth of who she really is. We must be willing to stand firm, Lorraine says, her voice rising with conviction. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs us, because the integrity of the family unit is worth protecting. I set down my wine glass. My hands are steady now. The decision I've been wrestling with for 11 months crystallizes in an instant. I stand. The movement draws attention. Heads turn. Nash's hand tightens on mine, but I gently pull away. I step into the aisle between tables, and the room goes quiet. Even Lorraine pauses mid-sentence, her eyes finding mine across the ballroom. I'm sorry to interrupt, I say. My voice is calm, clear, carries in the sudden silence. But I think these guests deserve to hear the whole truth about family integrity. Lorraine's smile freezes. Thea, this isn't the time. When is the time? I walk slowly toward the stage, aware of 50 pairs of eyes tracking my movement. When is it time to talk about what happened in 1985? I see her face go pale. See Vernon half rise from his seat near the stage, then sink back down. How do you watch someone preach about standards they never lived by themselves? Tell them, Lorraine, I say, stopping at the foot of the stage, looking up at her. Tell them about being 19 and pregnant and alone. The room is utterly silent now. Mrs. Sheffield's mouth hangs slightly open. The state senator sets down his fork. Every eye is on Lorraine, waiting. I don't know what you're... Lorraine begins, but her voice shakes. Tell them about your family refusing to accept what dishonored them. I continue, my voice still calm, almost gentle. Tell them about the baby you gave away. Tell them about being disowned, cut off, erased because you didn't meet their standards. Lorraine grips the podium. You have no right. I have every right. And now there's steel in my voice. Because you're doing to my children exactly what your family did to you. You're perpetuating the same cruelty, the same judgment, the same refusal to accept what makes you uncomfortable. I turn to face the audience. These people who worship Lorraine's carefully constructed image, who donate to her foundation, who believe her story about humble beginnings and moral character. Lorraine's family disowned her when she was 19 because she got pregnant outside of marriage. They made her give the baby up for adoption. Then they never spoke to her again. Everything she's built since then has been to hide that shame, to create a perfect image that erases who she really was. I turn back to Lorraine. She's shaking now, her hand trembling on the microphone. And when I married her son with children from a previous relationship, she saw her own past staring back at her. So she orchestrated a family boycott of our wedding, left 23 empty chairs as a monument to her disapproval, spent a year making sure everyone knew we weren't acceptable. The truth doesn't need to be shouted. Sometimes it just needs to be said, not because we did anything wrong, I say quietly, but because accepting us would mean accepting herself. And she's spent 40 years running from that. The silence in the ballroom is absolute. Vernon has his head in his hands. Mrs. Sheffield stares at Lorraine like she's seeing a stranger. Nash has risen from his seat, his face pale, but his eyes locked on mine with something that looks like pride. Lorraine stands frozen at the microphone, her hand visibly shaking. She opens her mouth, closes it, tries again. Nothing comes out. There's nothing left to say. The first guests started leaving within 2 minutes of my revelation, slipping out without saying goodbye to anyone. Lorraine still stands at the microphone, frozen. Vernon has moved to her side, but doesn't touch her, doesn't speak. He just stands there, staring at the floor. I walk back to my table. Nash is standing, his face unreadable. As I reach him, he takes my hand. Doesn't say anything, just holds on. Around us, the social unraveling happens in real time. Mrs. Sheffield gathers her things, avoiding eye contact. The state senator signals to his wife. A board member checks his phone like he's received an urgent message. No one approaches Lorraine. No one rushes to her defense. They just leave. Quiet conversations ripple through the remaining guests. Did you know? I had no idea. All this time, she makes you wonder what else. You don't get a lot of screaming when a reputation crumbles. Mostly just the sound of people finding excuses to leave early. The ballroom that was full 20 minutes ago is half empty now. The champagne fountains still flow. The ice sculptures still glisten, but the performance is over. I feel a hand on my arm. Opal stands beside me, tears streaming down her face. You did what I couldn't do 40 years ago, she whispers. I look at her. Nash's grandmother. The woman who showed me that photograph, who gave me the weapon I just used. You stayed silent, I say. Not an accusation, just a fact. Out of fear. Her voice breaks. Fear of making it worse. Fear of choosing a side. She wipes her eyes. I told myself I was protecting her. But really, I was protecting myself. The realization hits me. Opal didn't just witness Lorraine's trauma. She participated in the silence that enabled it. My courage has exposed not just Lorraine's secret, but Opal's lifetime of complicity. I'm sorry, Opal says, for not speaking up when it mattered. I squeeze her hand. You're speaking up now. She nods, then moves away. More guests trickle out. The event coordinator hovers uncertainly, unsure whether to start cleanup. Vernon finally moves, touches Lorraine's elbow, says something I can't hear. She jerks away from him, steps down from the stage, walks toward the back of the ballroom. I should go, Nash says quietly. Check on her. No. I keep hold of his hand. Let her sit with it. 20 more minutes pass. The last guests leave. The event coordinator directs staff to clean up. The gala ends with waiters stacking chairs and collecting abandoned champagne glasses. I find Lorraine in a corner near the coat check, sitting on a bench. She's still in her midnight blue gown, still wearing her pearls, but the facade is completely stripped away. She looks small, defeated, human. I walk over slowly. She doesn't run, just watches me approach with red-rimmed eyes. Why? Her voice is hoarse. Why did you have to say it in front of everyone? I sit down beside her, leaving space between us. So you'd understand what it feels like to be judged for something you didn't choose. She flinches. You orchestrated a public humiliation at my wedding. I continue quietly. 23 empty chairs for everyone to see. You wanted witnesses to your disapproval. So I gave you witnesses to your hypocrisy. I never meant... She stops, starts again. I didn't want to become this, but you did. Can you forgive someone who's only sorry because they finally understand how much pain they caused? I don't know the answer yet. Lorraine turns to look at me directly. Her makeup is smudged. Her perfect hair has started to come loose. My family destroyed me for making one mistake. And I turned around and did the same thing to you. Not just to me, to Nash, to my children, to your own son, I know. Her voice drops to barely a whisper. I'm sorry. 2 words. First genuine apology she's ever given me, but it's not enough. Understanding why she was cruel doesn't erase the cruelty. Knowing she was hurt doesn't undo the hurt she inflicted. An apology doesn't bring back the year of isolation, doesn't fill the empty chairs at my wedding, doesn't give my children back the grandmother who should have loved them. I stand up. I hope you mean that. I do. Then prove it. I look down at her. Not to me, to Nash, to Sloane, to all the children you rejected because accepting them meant accepting yourself. I walk away before she can respond. Nash is waiting by the door. We leave together, walk to the car in silence, drive through Billings streets lit by street lamps. Miles pass before he finally speaks. Do you regret it? I think about Sloane asking if I was going to say something. About my son watching to see if I'd stand up or stay silent. About all the children in blended families who wonder if they're enough. Some battles aren't about winning. They're about showing your children what courage looks like. No, I say. Our kids needed to see me stand up. The doorbell rang 3 days after the gala, and when I opened the door, Vernon was standing there with his hat in his hands. He looked older in the midday sun. Gray stubble shadowed his jaw. His shoulders sagged. He didn't have the confident posture I'd always associated with him. The wealthy businessman who stood silently beside Lorraine for over 30 years. Thea, he said quietly. Can we talk? I considered closing the door. Considered telling him 3 days wasn't long enough, that the wounds were too fresh, but I stepped aside. Come in. Nash appeared in the hallway, drawn by the unfamiliar voice. When he saw Vernon, he stopped. The 2 men stared at each other. Father and son, separated by years of complicity and silence. I owe you both an apology, Vernon said. A real one. I sat in the armchair by the window, still holding his hat. Nash and I took the couch. The coffee table between us felt like a necessary boundary. I enabled her for over 30 years, Vernon began, his voice rough. I watched Lorraine hurt people, cut off friends, alienate family members, control every relationship that threatened her perfect image. And I said nothing, did nothing. Told myself I was keeping the peace. He looked at Nash. I failed you as a father. When you needed me to stand up for you, I stayed silent. I let her orchestrate that wedding boycott. Why? Nash's voice is tight. You knew her secret. You knew why she was doing it. Why didn't you stop her? Because I was a coward. Vernon's hands shake on his hat. Because confronting her meant risking the marriage, the foundation, the comfortable life I'd built. So I chose comfort over courage. And I'm ashamed of what I allowed. You don't have to accept every apology just because it's offered. Some need to be earned over time. I lean forward. What changed? Watching you stand up, Vernon says, looking at me directly. Watching you do what I should have done 30 years ago. You spoke the truth I'd been too afraid to speak. He sets his hat on the coffee table. I can't undo 30 years of silence, but I'm here to ask permission to try. To be a grandfather to them. A real one. Not performative, not when it's convenient. I want to rebuild what I helped destroy. Nash looks at me. I see the question in his eyes. Do we let him try? I turn back to Vernon. Sorry is a start, not a reset button. You don't get to show up with an apology and expect everything to be fine. Trust is built through consistent action over time. I know. If you want to be a grandfather to our children, you earn that. You show up. You prove it. And the first time you choose Lorraine's comfort over their well-being, you're done. Vernon nods. I understand. Do you? Nash asks. Because understanding and doing are different things. I know. Vernon stands, picks up his hat. I'll prove it. However long it takes. He leaves quietly, carrying the weight of decades of regret. 2 days later, I get a text from an unknown number. This is Grady Donovan. Can we meet? Coffee shop on Higgins. Tomorrow at 10? Grady. Nash's cousin. I've met him twice at family functions. Quiet, mid-30s, kept to himself. One of the 23 empty chairs. Curiosity wins. I text back. I'll be there. The coffee shop smells like espresso and fresh pastries. Grady is already at a corner table, nursing a black coffee. He's tall, lean, with the Donovan family's dark hair and strong features. He stands when he sees me, nervous energy radiating from him. Thanks for coming, he says as I sit down. I wasn't sure you would. What's this about? He takes a breath. I was the one who sent the gift. The vase, the note. My heart skips. The anonymous gift, the crystal vase, the note apologizing for not being brave enough to attend. You sent the vase? I ask. Why? Because I didn't agree with what Lorraine was doing. I refused to participate in the boycott from the start. But I lacked the courage to defy her publicly. So I did what I could anonymously. What does it mean when the people who hurt you by staying silent finally find their voice? You could have attended, I say quietly. One friendly face in that sea of empty chairs would have meant everything. I know. And I'm sorry. I told myself that silent support was enough, that the gift proved I cared. But it wasn't enough. I should have been there. He looks up, meets my eyes. What you did at the gala, exposing the truth, standing up to her in front of everyone. It made me realize that hiding doesn't help anyone. I don't want to be the person who supports from the shadows anymore. Sometimes courage arrives late, but it still counts when it finally shows up. What are you saying? I ask. I'm saying I want to be a known ally to your family. No more anonymity. No more silence. His voice strengthens. I was wrong to be silent. I don't want to be silent anymore. Sloane held my hand tighter than usual as we walked into the park to meet Lorraine. 3 weeks had passed since the gala. 3 weeks of phone calls and Vernon acting as intermediary. Lorraine had asked, not demanded, asked if she could apologize to Sloane face to face. Neutral ground. So here we are. walking across Caras Park on a warm July afternoon, heading toward a woman who spent 2 years making my stepdaughter feel unwanted. You don't have to do this, I tell Sloane quietly. We can turn around right now. I know. She's 13 now, taller, more certain. But I want to hear what she has to say. Lorraine sits on a bench near the playground, hands folded in her lap. She's dressed simply. Jeans, a blue blouse, minimal jewelry. No pearls, no armor. When she sees us, she stands, nervous energy radiating from her. She looks different than she did at the gala. Smaller, more human. Thank you for coming, Lorraine says. Her eyes flick to me, then settle on Sloane. Both of you. Sloane doesn't respond, just waits. I position myself slightly behind my stepdaughter, close enough to support, far enough to let this conversation belong to them. Lorraine takes a breath. Sloane, I owe you an apology. I made you feel like you weren't wanted. That was wrong. The words are simple, direct. No elaborate explanation, no excuses. Sloane tilts her head. Why did you do it? There's something about watching someone apologize to your child that cuts deeper than any apology they could give you. Because when they hurt your child, they hurt the part of you that can't be reasoned with, can't be soothed by explanations. The part that exists solely to protect this person you love. Lorraine's hands shake. She clasps them together, trying to still the trembling. Because I was scared, she says quietly. Your mom married my son, and you came as part of that family. And that reminded me of parts of my own past that I'd spent 40 years trying to forget. Sloane frowns. What does your past have to do with me? Nothing. That's the point. Lorraine sits back down on the bench, gestures for us to join her. After a moment's hesitation, we do. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just a child being a child. But I let my own fear and shame turn into cruelty toward you. She turns to face Sloane directly. I rejected you because accepting you meant accepting parts of myself I'd been running from. And that was unfair. It was cruel. And I'm sorry. The apology hangs in the air. A chickadee calls from a nearby tree. Children's laughter drifts from the playground. Sloane is quiet for a long moment. Processing. You didn't come to the wedding, she finally says. You made sure nobody from Dad's family came. There were all those empty chairs. I know. And at the farmer's market last year, you were nice to me for like 30 seconds. Then you left like you hadn't even seen us. I know. So why should I believe you now? How do you teach your children to protect themselves without teaching them to harden their hearts forever? It's the question I've been wrestling with. How to show Sloane that people can hurt you deeply without teaching her to build walls so high that real connection becomes impossible. You shouldn't, Lorraine says, and the answer surprises me. You shouldn't believe me just because I said the words. Words are easy. What matters is what I do next. She looks at me, then back at Sloane. Your mom told Vernon that trust has to be earned through consistent action over time. She was right. So I'm not asking you to forgive me today or trust me tomorrow. I'm just asking if I can try. If I can show up and prove that I mean what I'm saying. Sloane considers this, looks at me. I give her the smallest nod. This is her choice. Okay, she says carefully. You can try. Thank you. We sit on that bench for a few more minutes. The conversation doesn't flow easily. There are awkward silences, careful words, the weight of everything unsaid. But it's a start. When we finally stand to leave, Lorraine doesn't try to hug Sloane, doesn't reach for connection she hasn't earned. just says goodbye and watches us walk back across the grass. Sloane is quiet until we reach the car. Then, as I'm unlocking the doors, she asks, "Do you think she meant it?" I look back at the bench where Lorraine still sits, alone, staring at the river. Sometimes the wisest answer is admitting you don't know yet. I think time will answer that question, I tell my stepdaughter. Apologies are just words. What matters is whether she shows up consistently, whether she changes her behavior, whether she proves through her actions that she meant what she said today. Sloane nods slowly, processing this wisdom that shouldn't belong to 13-year-olds, but does because adults failed to do better. "So we wait and see," she says. "We wait and see," I agree. "And we protect our hearts while we do." The first time Lorraine respected a boundary I'd set, I almost didn't notice. I was so used to her pushing through them. It happened in August, 6 weeks after the park meeting. Sloane had a school science fair. I'd told Nash we'd invite Lorraine if she asked, but wouldn't extend the invitation ourselves. She texted me directly. "Sloane mentioned her science fair next week. Is it okay if I come? I understand if it's too soon. Is it okay if I come?" Not "I'm planning to attend." Permission. She was asking permission. "You can come," I texted back. 6 p.m. in the school gymnasium. "Thank you. I'll sit in the back unless Sloane wants me closer." She showed up early, sat in the back row, and waited until Sloane noticed her before approaching. When she did walk over, she led with a question. "Tell me about your project. I want to understand what you're interested in, not advice, not judgment. Just genuine interest in what a 13-year-old cared about." I watched from across the gymnasium as Lorraine listened to Sloane explain her experiment on plant growth and light wavelengths. Watched her nod, ask questions, smile at Sloane's enthusiasm. Watched her leave after 20 minutes without trying to stay longer, without inserting herself into family conversations, without making the evening about her redemption. She just showed up, listened, and left. Real change doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It whispers through 100 small moments of restraint and effort. In September, she asked if she could attend Nash's piano recital. Again, she asked. Again, she sat where directed. Again, she left after congratulating him without monopolizing his time. In October, she brought Sloane a birthday gift. Sloane had actually mentioned wanting a specific book series, not something Lorraine thought she should want. She stayed for cake and left when I started cleaning up, instead of trying to help in a way that would reassert control. Small moments, consistent effort, no grand gestures, just a woman learning to exist in our family without trying to reshape it. November brought Thanksgiving, the first major holiday since the gala. We hosted at our house, my territory, my rules. I invited Lorraine and Vernon. Faye came. Opal came. Grady came with his wife. The Donovan family, rebuilt from fragments, gathered around a table that used to symbolize everything I wasn't allowed to have. Lorraine brought cranberry sauce, asked where I wanted it placed, complimented the turkey, listened to the kids' stories without interrupting. When Sloane's little brother knocked over his milk, Lorraine handed him napkins without commenting on how he should be more careful. When did I stop waiting for her to tell me I was good enough and start knowing it myself? The question surfaces as I watch Lorraine help clear plates, after asking if I want help, after being told yes. She's in my kitchen, putting leftovers in containers I've designated, following the system I've created instead of rearranging it. A year ago, this would have felt like victory. Lorraine Donovan, diminished, following my rules in my house, but it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like peace, because somewhere along the way, I stopped needing her to validate me, stopped waiting for her approval to feel whole, stopped measuring my worth by whether she accepted me. When did it happen? Was it the moment I exposed her secret at the gala? Was it standing at the altar watching Nash instead of the empty chairs? Was it even earlier? The first time I chose to marry him, despite knowing what it would cost? I think about the callback phrase from the wedding reception. "We are enough." I whispered it to Nash while his family's absence screamed their judgment. I meant it then as defiance, but sometime between then and now, it stopped being defiance and started being truth. We are enough. Not because Lorraine finally accepts us, not because Vernon apologized or Grady stepped into the light. We're enough because we chose each other, built a family from love instead of obligation, and refused to let someone else's trauma dictate our worth. Lorraine's change matters. Her effort matters. The slow rebuilding of trust and the careful respect of boundaries and the genuine interest in my children's lives, all of it matters, but it doesn't complete me. It doesn't make me whole. I was already whole. I just didn't realize it yet. The moment you realize you don't need someone's approval anymore is the moment you're finally free. Later that evening, after everyone's gone and the kids are in bed, Nash finds me at the window, looking out at our backyard. "You okay?" he asks, slipping an arm around my waist. "Yeah." And I mean it. "I was just thinking about how far we've come. She's really trying," he says quietly. "My mother. I never thought I'd see her change like this." "She is," I agree. "And I'm glad. For you, for the kids, for her even. But I realized something today." I turned to face him. "I don't need her approval anymore. Maybe I never really did." He smiles. "When did that happen?" I think about empty chairs and anonymous gifts and confrontations in ballrooms and quiet apologies in parks. "I think it happened," I say slowly. "The moment I walked down that aisle alone. 1 year later, I walked into the same garden where I'd married alone. And this time, the chairs were full. Not with the people who should have been there the first time. Not with the 23 Donovans who chose Lorraine's approval over Nash's happiness. But with the people who showed up in the months since, slowly, carefully, earning their place through consistent changed behavior. Canyon Creek Garden venue looks almost identical to that day in July 2023. Same white arbor draped in climbing roses. Same stone pathway. Same Montana mountains in the distance. But the chairs tell a different story. Vernon sits in the front row, talking quietly with Grady and his wife. Opal is beside them, her silver hair catching the afternoon sun. Faye and her family occupy the row behind. A few other Donovan relatives, cousins who reached out after the gala, who apologized for their silence, who proved their regret was genuine, fill the remaining seats. Aunt Margaret isn't among them. Some apologies never came. Not 23, maybe 12, maybe 15 if you count the kids running around chasing butterflies. But they're here. And that matters. The chairs were full, but not with the people who thought they had a right to be there. With the ones who earned it. This isn't the wedding reception we should have had. It's our 1-year anniversary party. And the guest list looks nothing like what Lorraine would have planned. These aren't people claiming entitled positions. These are people who showed up when it cost them something, who chose connection over comfort, who proved through action that they wanted to be part of our lives. Sloan runs up to me, her dress the same shade of lavender she wore as Flower Girl. "Mom, Vernon said he brought the photo album from when Dad was little. Can we look at it? After dinner," I tell her, and she grins before racing back to where Nash is setting up the buffet table. My stepdaughter calls me Mom now. Not all the time. Sometimes it's still Thea, but the word appears more often. And every time I hear it, something in my chest settles deeper. String lights flicker on as the sun starts to set. Someone starts music, and suddenly the garden fills with conversation and laughter, and the particular energy of people who chose to gather. Faye finds me near the arbor. "You doing okay?" "Yeah, I mean it. Better than okay." She follows my gaze to where Vernon is teaching my son how to skip stones in the decorative pond. He's been consistent. Consistent matters. I agree. And Lorraine? Not here. I consider this. Not this time. Maybe next year. We'll see. Isn't that what family should be? Not the people who share your blood, but the ones who show up when it costs them something. I've spent the past year watching people prove who they are through small choices. Vernon attending every one of Sloane's soccer games. Grady hosting us for dinner once a month. Opal calling just to check in. And Lorraine, carefully respecting every boundary I set. Asking permission instead of announcing plans. Accepting no without argument. Sending occasional texts that never demand responses. It's not forgiveness yet. Maybe it never will be. But it's something. As the sun dips below the mountains, Nash finds me standing at the edge of the garden, looking at the aisle. I walked alone a year ago. "You thinking about the wedding?" he asks, slipping his hand into mine, thinking about how different everything looks now. The chairs are full. The right chairs, I correct. Not all of them, but the right ones. He pulls me close, and we watch our blended family. His daughter and my son teaching each other card tricks. Faye dancing with her husband. Vernon and Grady deep in conversation. "We are enough, Mom," Nash says quietly, using the phrase I whispered to him at our wedding reception. "Just like you said, we always were," I tell him, and I mean it. Not as defiance this time. Not as armor. Just as simple truth. My phone buzzes. I pull it out, expecting something mundane. Instead, it's from Lorraine. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm trying. I hope that counts for something. I read it twice. Let the words settle. Don't delete it. Don't respond immediately, either, because forgiveness isn't a light switch. I can flip because someone apologized. It's a door that opens slowly, over time, only if the person on the other side keeps showing up. Only if their actions match their words. Only if trust gets rebuilt brick by careful brick. Forgiveness isn't forgetting the pain. It's refusing to let that pain decide who deserves your love next. Maybe I'll answer her tomorrow. Maybe next week. Maybe I'll wait until she's proven through another year of consistent effort that her change is real and lasting. Or maybe I'll never fully forgive her. And that will be okay too. Because forgiveness isn't something I owe anyone. Not even someone who's genuinely trying to be better. I slip the phone back in my pocket and return my attention to the garden, to the people who chose to be here, to the family we built from courage instead of obligation. 1 year ago, I walked down that aisle alone, past 23 empty chairs, toward a man who loved me enough to lose everything. Tonight, I stand in the same garden, surrounded by people who proved that love isn't about being entitled to someone's presence. It's about earning the privilege of being let in. The chairs are full now, not all of them. Not the ones that demanded to be filled, but the ones that matter. And we are enough, looking back. The moment I walked down that aisle alone was the moment I became truly free, not from Lorraine's judgment, from my own need for her approval. My mistake wasn't standing up to her. It was waiting so long to realize her acceptance was never required. Don't make that mistake. Don't spend years waiting for someone to tell you you're worthy. This isn't just another revenge story about exposing secrets. It's a story about choosing who you become after trauma. Lorraine became the monster that once destroyed her. I chose differently. The lesson: forgiveness isn't forgetting the pain. It's refusing to let that pain turn you into what hurt you. I believe God put me through this to teach me that strength isn't about revenge. It's about protecting your peace while leaving the door open for genuine change. Real revenge stories end with triumph over the villain. But real life? Real life ends with understanding that some doors open slowly, and that's okay. What do you think? Was I right to expose her secret? Or should I have stayed silent? Leave a comment and tell me how you would have handled those 23 empty chairs. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear they are enough. And subscribe for more stories about families, forgiveness, and finding your strength. Thank you for staying until the very end. Some details have been fictionalized for narrative impact, but the heart of the message, that you don't need anyone's approval to be whole, is real.